just got to begin to chase a dream that is bigger than you.
Hi, thanks so much for joining my chat about brain food. My name is Kate Kinne. I'm a registered dietitian with Kinne Fitness. And as you may know, June is Professional Wellness Month, and I thought what a great time to talk about how the foods we eat can impact our brain health. I think a lot of the times when we think about eating healthy and nutritious foods, we're focused on heart health and weight control and blood sugar control. And there's really been a lot of research in recent years showing that the foods we eat really can impact our brain and the rate with which we have cognitive decline as we age. So we used to think, and scientists used to think, that we were born with all the brain neurons we get for life, and if something happens and we get damaged, they cannot be replaced. But we're realizing more and more that the brain is actually very plastic throughout life and can rewire itself in response to experience, and it can form and reform and reconnect synaptic connections. So you can change your brain for the better. And today we're going to focus mostly on how you can do that through food. So as we age, the risk factors for dementia and cognitive decline in general, age is the strongest risk factor, which obviously you can't do anything about your age. But data also shows that there are a lot of risk factors that are modifiable. Things like physical inactivity and unhealthy food choices, smoking, social isolation, not getting enough sleep, lack of mentally stimulating activities, misuse of alcohol, those can all increase risk factors for cognitive decline. And also people who suffer from obesity and high blood sugar, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, they actually have increased chances of developing dementia later in life. So studies really have demonstrated that people can delay this progression of cognitive decline due to the aging process by 2 or 3 years just by making some simple lifestyle interventions. So we're going to talk mostly about the food interventions that we can start implementing today to help your cognitive function. There was a 2017 AARP, or Brain Health and Nutrition Survey, that went out, and what they found was that people who reported eating a well-balanced diet and nutritious meals also reported better brain health. And the key is that there actually is no one single food that's the magic bullet, but rather a combination of good healthy foods is likely to help protect the brain. And interestingly, for the large part, a heart healthy diet is actually considered a brain healthy diet as well. So studies that show that a diet causes decreases in dementia also simultaneously shows that there's improvement in cardiovascular health. So we know that some of the changes that we might be implementing for heart health might actually help the brain as well, which is good news. So the focus is really on all the same types of foods, what we will get into. So I'm going to show you a slide here. This is the Mediterranean diet food pyramid. So just kind of a high level. Mediterranean diet is one that people who live around the Mediterranean area, the Mediterranean Sea, they follow this pattern of eating, and they tend to have lower risk of cardiovascular disease, lower incidence of diabetes, and it's shown to be a very healthy way of eating. So when I say diet here, I mean way of eating. So you can see on the bottom lots of fruits and vegetables, olives, olive oil, healthy fish, whole grain carbohydrates. And then as you move up the pyramid, there's less red meats, less sweets, moderate alcohol consumption. This is known to be good for the heart, and to have also some really great properties that help the brain as well. Another diet that's out there, another pattern of eating that's recommended for people for treating hypertension, so high blood pressure, the DASH eating plan stands for dietary approaches to stop hypertension. The benefit of this diet is to lower blood pressure and also the bad cholesterol. So it's good for the heart, but also research has shown, and we'll talk a little bit more about this on the next slide, that this diet is good for the brain as well. So you can see it's many of the same recommendations that we had with that Mediterranean diet. So it's really a plant-focused diet. It's rich in fruits and vegetables, nuts, whole grains, low fat and non-fat dairy products. The meats that are in there are very lean, fish and poultry, and then some heart healthy fats in there from your nuts and seeds and oils. It also emphasizes low sodium foods, and also with an emphasis on portion size. And it does show improvement following this diet. Limiting the foods that you see listed here actually show improvement in blood pressure, in cholesterol, and then other benefits in linked to reducing risk of chronic disease in general. So a couple of years, well, I guess it was about 8 years ago, Dr. Morris from is the director of Rush Institute on Healthy Aging in the Chicago area. And she conducted really pioneering research that to find the effective dietary protocols to prevent Alzheimer's disease and dementia in general. So she published this MIND diet, which stands for it's Mediterranean Dash intervention for neurodegenerative delay. So basically, it's a combination of those two diets we just mentioned, with the thought that it's going to help, and the evidence has provided it helps prevent neurodegenerative delay. So I really want you to focus in here on this information. So including these foods, many of which I've already listed on the previous slides. Every single day, some green leafy vegetables, and then other vegetables at least once per day, because variety is important too, and there's lots of different nutrients in all the different vegetables. Nuts every day, those fatty, heart healthy fatty oils that are in those nuts, really beneficial. Berries at least twice a week. There's really great anti-inflammatory properties in berries, really great antioxidants. Beans every other day. So a very plant forward way to get lean protein in your day is to get some from beans. Whole grains 3 times per day. So not just grains, but whole grains like oatmeal and quinoa and brown rice, whole wheat breads, all good options. Fish at least once per week. And actually, the American Heart Association recommends fatty fish like salmon or tuna or herring, at least 2 servings per week for heart health. But in this particular diet for neurodegenerative delay, prevention of, fish at least once a week. Poultry a couple times a week, olive oil as a main staple in terms of a healthy fat that we use, and then also wine, 1 glass per day. Probably good news for some of us. I would add, however, though, if you're not somebody who's usually a drinker, I don't necessarily think that you need to add that, but really wine in moderation might be beneficial. And then the other part is really limiting some of these foods that can be damaging to the brain and to the heart. So red meats, particularly the ones that are higher in fat. So when you do have red meats, going with the leaner options. Minimizing the butter and the margarine that's in stick form, that's more solid at room temperature. Cheese, less than 1 serving per week. I think that can be made a little bit better by choosing reduced fat cheese options. So maybe cheese made with 2% milk instead of whole milk could make that, we could make that a little bit more liberal. Limiting pastries and sweets, and limiting the fried or fast foods. So Dr. Morris had found that people who followed this diet the least had the fastest rate of cognitive decline. And people who had the highest scores, who followed this the best, had the slowest rate of cognitive decline, and a 53% reduction in risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And all in all, they found about a difference of about 7.5 years in aging. So that's really, really significant. And I do have a few more recommendations. The Global Council on Brain Health report on brain food. So this is an independent collaboration of scientists and health professionals, policy experts, et cetera, from around the world who are working in the area of brain health and human cognition. This group was convened by AARP as well, and their recommendations are very similar. Encouraging berries, fresh vegetables, especially leafy greens, and that can be a variety. I think variety is great. Spinach, kale, arugula, romaine, mix them all up. Healthy fats like you find in oils, extra virgin olive oil, avocado is a great source of healthy fat. Your nuts, we know that they are high calorie foods, so more is not necessarily better, but getting, an ounce a day, a quarter cup a day is a good recommendation. And then getting that fish and seafood, particularly the fish and seafood that are high in omega-3s, like salmon, tuna that I mentioned, herring, sardines and anchovies are also great options. And then including some of these other foods too. Poultry, whole grains, low fat dairy, same things we've been mentioning. So these recommendations are actually focused on for people who men and women age 50 and older who've not been diagnosed already with a neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's disease. And then again, similarly, we really want to limit those same kinds of foods that we know are higher in saturated fat. Saturated fat is the kind that can clog our arteries and can be really hard on the heart, but also causes inflammation in the body. And we know inflammation leads to a lot of chronic disease and can lead to complications with cognitive health as well. So limiting those foods, like I said, alcohol in moderation is a good recommendation. And then I would like to add here too, there are, aside from those food recommendations, there's a couple other things to consider, and fitness may be actually the most important thing you can do to increase your brain's resiliency to disease. So if you had to pick one thing and you're not very physically active, I would start there, add some physical activity, and then keep in mind all those food recommendations that we just went over. Sleep is really important. That's when your brain does a lot of filing and management of information. We know that a well-rested brain is a healthy brain. 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night is recommended. Research always also shows that people who retire early tend to have higher rates of cognitive decline, or more likely, because continuing to learn and discover new things is really good for our brain, as is social connections. Loneliness in older people tends to increase cognitive decline as well. So maintaining those social connections are really very important as well. I have one recipe that I want to go over with you that combines a lot of these ingredients. I want to show you how easy it is. It's really delicious. So come join me in my kitchen.